I was 3 days old when my parents called me a monster. I don't remember it, obviously. But Sister Agnes told me the story when I turned 18. She said my mother sobbed dramatically in the hospital room while my father stared at me with cold, empty eyes. I had a large port wine birthmark covering the left side of my face, dark purple and spreading from my temple to my jaw. My father whispered to the nurses, "We can't show her to anyone like this." They signed papers. Fake papers, Sister Agnes later discovered. Papers claiming I died during birth due to complications. They handed me to a social worker and walked away. That same night it was raining hard. A nun found me on the church doorstep, wrapped in a thin hospital blanket, crying and alone. Sister Agnes picked me up, looked at my face, and whispered something I'd carry forever. "You're beautiful no matter what they said." She named me Lena Moore. Because, she said, I deserved more than what I'd been given. I grew up in St. Catherine's Orphanage in Boston. It wasn't fancy, but it was full of love. Sister Agnes raised me like I was her own. She never made me feel different, even when the other kids did. By the time I was 7, I'd learned that people stared. The grocery store, church, school. One day, a boy in my class pointed at my face and said, "She looks cursed." Other kids laughed. I ran home and found a mirror in the hallway. I stared at my reflection, at the mark that covered half my face, and I hated it. I hated myself. I grabbed the mirror and threw it against the wall. It shattered into pieces. Sister Agnes found me sitting in the broken glass, crying. She didn't scold me. She just held me and said, "The world fears what it can't understand, Lena. Make them see what they missed." That night she showed me something in her office. Architectural sketches on the wall. But they weren't buildings. They were faces. Medical drawings of facial reconstruction. "One day," I told her, staring at those drawings, "I'll rebuild beauty itself." On my 18th birthday, Sister Agnes gave me a sealed envelope. "This came from the adoption agency," she said. "Your biological parents' names are inside." I held the envelope for a long time. Then I walked to the fireplace and threw it in. I watched it burn. "They chose their reflection over their child," I said. "I don't need their names." Sister Agnes nodded. She understood. The next day I got a letter. A thick one with an official seal. I'd been accepted into Boston University School of Medicine with a full scholarship. My grades were perfect. My entrance essay about wanting to help children with facial differences had impressed the admissions board. I was going to become a doctor. Not for them. For me. And for every kid who'd ever been called a monster. Sister Agnes cried when I told her, "You're going to change the world, Lena." I hugged her tight. "I'm going to try." 2 weeks later, I moved into a small dorm room and started my journey toward becoming a reconstructive surgeon. I didn't know then that this path would lead me back to the people who abandoned me. Medical school was brutal. Long nights, impossible exams, constant pressure. But I thrived. I studied harder than anyone else. I volunteered at children's hospitals. I shadowed every reconstructive surgeon I could find. By my 3rd year, I was already assisting in surgeries. Then came the case that changed everything. A 6-year-old boy named Michael had been burned in a house fire. Half his face was covered in scar tissue. He wouldn't look in mirrors. Wouldn't go to school. Wouldn't speak. I assisted on his reconstruction surgery. Took 8 hours. When the bandages came off weeks later, Michael looked in the mirror and smiled. It was small, but it was real. I broke down in the hallway afterward. My attending found me crying. "Dr. Moore," he said gently, "you have a gift." I looked at him through tears. If I can give him what I never had, maybe that's enough. He smiled. "It's more than enough." A week later, I was at a medical conference when someone called out, "Dr. Walsh." I turned instinctively, then froze. Walsh. That was the name Sister Agnes had mentioned once. My biological parents' last name. I felt something shift inside me. A door I thought I'd closed forever creaking open. After the conference, I couldn't stop thinking about that name. Walsh. I'd burned the envelope. I'd told myself I didn't care. But curiosity is a powerful thing. I went to the library and searched Robert and Elaine Walsh Boston. What I found made my stomach turn. They were on the cover of a luxury lifestyle magazine. The Walsh Group. Building Perfection. My father, Robert Walsh, was a plastic surgeon. Not just any surgeon. He owned a chain of elite cosmetic surgery clinics across the East Coast. He'd built an empire on making people beautiful. The irony was suffocating. My mother, Elaine, was his business partner. Blonde, elegant, perfect. Everything I wasn't. The article talked about their philosophy. Perfection is everything. Beauty is not just skin deep. It's essential to success. I stared at their faces. These were the people who called me a monster. Who threw me away because I didn't meet their standards. And now they made millions selling those same standards to desperate people. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for hours. Part of me wanted to forget. But another part, the part that remembered that little boy saying I looked cursed, wanted them to know. To see what I'd become. I just didn't know how. Not yet. Over the next year I researched everything about the Walsh Group. Robert had started small, a single clinic in Cambridge. But he'd grown fast. Too fast. I found articles about lawsuits. Patients claiming experimental procedures went wrong. Settlements paid quietly. One article mentioned a research project funded by Walsh Group that used unapproved techniques on patients who couldn't afford traditional surgery. They were promised cheap procedures in exchange for being test subjects. Many ended up worse than before. My mentor, Dr. Raymond Chen, had written a paper condemning the practice. Unethical and dangerous, he called it. When I asked him about it, his face darkened. Robert Walsh is brilliant. But he's a monster. He cares more about profit than patients. I didn't tell him Robert Walsh was my father. Couldn't. But I filed that information away. If my parents had built their empire on exploiting vulnerable people, on selling perfection while destroying those who sought it, then they deserved to fall. I just never imagined I'd be the one to make it happen. Not intentionally anyway. Fate had other plans. One night everything changed. I was finishing a late surgery when my phone rang. The ER nurse sounded panicked. Dr. Moore, we have 2 criticals incoming. Car accident. Major trauma. Asked for names. She said, Robert and Elaine Walsh. I stood in the hallway, phone pressed to my ear, unable to move. Robert and Elaine Walsh. My parents. People who abandoned me. Were coming to my hospital. To my operating room. The nurse's voice cut through my shock. Dr. Moore. They're 5 minutes out. Head trauma, facial fractures, internal bleeding. They need you. I wanted to say no. To tell them to call another surgeon. Anyone else. But the words wouldn't come. Because despite everything I was a doctor. I'd taken an oath. I hung up and walked toward the ER. My hands were shaking. My mind was racing. What were the chances? In a city of millions, they crashed near my hospital. On my shift. Fate was cruel. Or maybe it was poetic. When the ambulances arrived, I was waiting. They wheeled in 2 gurneys. Robert Walsh was unconscious. Blood covering his face. Elaine was awake, barely, her eyes unfocused. She looked at me without seeing me. A nurse grabbed my arm. Doctor, they'll die without you. I stared at the 2 people who'd ruined my life before it even started. Could walk away. Let someone else handle it. But Sister Agnes's voice echoed in my head. Kindness is your rebellion, Lena. Took a breath. Get them in Tour 1. Prep for emergency cranial and facial reconstruction. The nurse nodded and rushed away. I stood there for one more moment, looking at my unconscious parents. Then I whispered, scalpel. The surgery lasted 12 hours. Robert's skull was fractured. Elaine's face was shattered. Both had internal injuries that required immediate attention. I worked alongside Dr. Chen and 2 other surgeons. We moved like a machine, stopping bleeding, repairing bones, rebuilding what the crash had destroyed. At one point, while I was reconstructing Elaine's cheekbone, her locket fell open. It had been around her neck, somehow intact despite the crash. Inside was a photo. Baby. Dark hair. Green eyes. A birthmark on her face. Me. Froze. Dr. Chen looked over. You okay? I nodded and closed the locket. But my hands were trembling. She kept my photo. For 25 years, she'd carried me around her neck. Why? If she loved me enough to keep my picture, why did she give me up? The questions burned, but I pushed them aside. I had work to do. By the time we finished, both of them were stable. Critical but alive. The nurse looked at me with respect. You saved them, Dr. Moore. I didn't respond. I just walked out, pulled off my gloves, and sat in the hallway, wondering what the hell I was supposed to do now. They stayed in ICU for 3 days. Unconscious. Healing. I checked on them more than I should have. I told myself it was professional obligation. But really I was trying to understand. To see them as people, not just the monsters who abandoned me. Robert looked older than his photos. Gray hair. Wrinkles. The crash had aged him even more. Elaine looked fragile. Her face was bandaged heavily. She'd need more surgeries. Multiple reconstructions. On the 4th day she woke up. I was checking her vitals when her eyes opened. She looked at me, confused, disoriented. Where am I? Her voice was weak. I told her she was in the hospital. That she'd been in an accident. She tried to touch her face, but I stopped her. You have extensive injuries. Facial fractures. We've stabilized you, but you'll need more procedures. She started crying. Will I look like myself again? I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who'd valued appearance above everything. Who'd thrown away her own child because of a birthmark. Who'd built an empire on selling beauty. Now she was asking me if she'd be beautiful again. I could have told her the truth. That she'd be scarred. That she'd never look the same. But instead I said, you'll look better than you ever did. She seemed comforted. She closed her eyes. I walked away before she could ask my name. Robert woke up 2 days later. Less fragile than Elaine. More demanding. The nurse called me. The male patient is awake. He's asking for the surgeon in charge. I went to his room. He was sitting up slightly, bandages covering half his head. His eyes were sharp despite the trauma. You're the doctor who operated on me, he asked. I confirmed I was. He studied me. What's your name? I hesitated. Dr. Moore. He frowned. Moore. Do I know you? I told him no. He seemed suspicious but let it go. My wife. How is she? I told him she was stable. That she'd need more surgeries but would recover. He exhaled. Thank God. We can't afford any permanent damage. Our company, our reputation, it all depends on appearances. Course. Even near death, he was worried about image. I asked if he needed anything. He said, I need my lawyer, Victoria Chin. And I need you to keep this quiet. The press can't know we were in an accident. Asked why. He looked at me like I was stupid. Because it shows weakness. And we can't afford weakness. I nodded and left. Outside his room, I felt something cold settle in my chest. He hadn't changed. He was still the man who cared more about perfection than people. Still the man who abandoned his daughter. I wanted to tell him. Right there. But I didn't. Not yet. I needed to know more first. Over the next week I learned everything. The crash wasn't just an accident. Robert had been driving drunk. Elaine had tried to stop him. They'd fought. He'd lost control. But more than that, the crash had exposed something bigger. Robert's company stocks were collapsing. Investors were pulling out. An investigation had been launched into the Walsh Group's financial practices. Turns out Robert had been embezzling funds. Using patient fees to cover personal expenses. Falsifying insurance claims. The crash happened the same night a whistleblower leaked documents to the press. He was running. I overheard him on the phone one afternoon. I was checking his vitals when his lawyer, Victoria Chen, called. He didn't realize I was listening. We can't let anyone know about the investigation, he said. And we definitely can't let them know about our daughter, the one who died. If they find out we had a child with a deformity, it'll destroy our brand. My blood went cold. Our daughter who died. He was still lying. Still pretending I never existed. Still ashamed of me. I finished my checkup silently and left. That night I made a decision. I was going to make sure the truth came out. All of it. The media caught wind of the Walshes being hospitalized. First it was just gossip. But then someone leaked their location. Reporters swarmed the hospital. Security had to lock down the ward. I was called into a meeting with the hospital administrator. Dr. Moore, you're the lead surgeon on the Walsh case. The press is asking for statements. We need you to handle the medical side of this. Agreed. That's when things got interesting. A reporter did some digging. Found out I was adopted. Found out I'd been left at St. Catherine's Orphanage 25 years ago. Found out that same orphanage was funded partially by anonymous donations from the Walsh Group. The pieces were connecting. The reporter, a woman named Jessica Torres, contacted me directly. Dr. Moore, I'm working on a story about the Walshes. And I think you're connected to them. More than just as their doctor. I told her I couldn't comment. She persisted. I found records. A baby abandoned at St. Catherine's the same week the Walshes reported a stillbirth. But there's no death certificate. Just a falsified record. I stayed quiet. She continued. If you're their daughter, the public deserves to know. Especially given what they've built their empire on. I told her to send me what she had. That night I reviewed her research. She was right. Everything pointed to me. And if this came out, it would destroy them. Not just their business. Their entire legacy. I had the power to end them. The question was, should I? I didn't have to decide. The next day the story broke. Walsh Group built on lies. Abandoned daughter now their savior. Jessica had published it. With photos, documents, everything. The hospital exploded with media. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Colleagues stared at me in hallways. And then Elaine saw the news. A nurse told me she was watching TV in her room when the story aired. She saw my face on the screen. Heard my name. Lena Moore. Former orphan. Current reconstructive surgeon. Adopted daughter of the people she just saved. The nurse said Elaine went pale. She stared at the TV, then at the photo they showed of me as a baby. The birthmark. The green eyes. She whispered, "That's her. That's my baby." Then she started crying. An hour later, she requested to see me. I almost refused. But I needed to hear what she had to say. I went to her room. She was sitting up, still bandaged, looking fragile and broken. When I walked in, she started sobbing. "You're my daughter, aren't you?" I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her. This woman who gave birth to me. Who held me for 3 days. Who decided I wasn't worth keeping. Finally I said, "The one you buried?" "Yes." She cried harder. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Asked why. "Why did you do it?" She couldn't look at me. "Your father. He said we couldn't be associated with imperfection. That it would ruin us. I wanted to keep you. I swear I did. But he wouldn't let me." I felt anger rising. "So you chose him over me?" She nodded, still crying. "I've regretted it every day since." I turned to leave. She grabbed my hand. "Please. Don't tell Robert. He can never know you're alive." I pulled my hand away. "Why would I protect him?" She looked terrified. "Because if he knows, he'll destroy you. He'll destroy everything you've built." "Please, Lena." I left without answering. But her words stayed with me. "He'll destroy you." Was she warning me? Or threatening me? I didn't have to wait long to find out. The next day, Robert called me to his room. His lawyer, Victoria Chen, was there. A sharp woman in her 50s with cold eyes. Robert looked at me differently now. With suspicion. With anger. "Close the door," he said. I did. He gestured to Victoria. "Tell her." Victoria opened a folder. Dr. Moore. Or should I say Lena Walsh. You've created quite a problem for us. I stayed silent. She continued. My client is prepared to offer you a settlement. $2 million. In exchange you sign an NDA. You never speak about your connection to the Walshes. You never claim to be their daughter publicly. You disappear. I laughed. Actually laughed. You think you can buy my silence? Robert spoke, his voice cold. We can do more than that. We can destroy your career. We have connections. We can make sure you never work as a doctor again. I leaned against the wall. Go ahead. Try. Victoria's eyes narrowed. You're making a mistake. I looked at Robert. You threw me away because I wasn't perfect. Now I'm the one who saved your life. And you want to erase me again. He didn't flinch. You were a mistake. You still are. Something snapped inside me. I walked over to his bed. Looked him directly in the eyes. Then let's see how your empire survives imperfection. I left the room. Behind me I heard Victoria say, She's going to be a problem. Robert replied, Then make her go away. I recorded the whole conversation. I was ready for war. Over the next 2 weeks I gathered everything. Documents proving Robert falsified my death certificate. Records showing the Walsh Group's illegal medical trials. Financial statements showing embezzlement. Patient testimonies about botched procedures. Sister Agnes had kept files. Everything from the night I was abandoned. The hospital blanket with the Walsh family crest embroidered on it. The note my mother left with me. Forgive us. Photos of my birthmark before it faded slightly with age. I contacted Jessica Torres. Gave her everything. She worked fast. Within days she had a full exposé ready. The Walsh Empire. Built on lies, fraud, and a daughter's pain. It went viral. National news picked it up. Robert's company stocks plummeted. Investors fled. Patients filed lawsuits. The Walsh Group was collapsing. And I was the one who brought it down. Robert found out I was the source. He called me screaming. You destroyed everything I built. I stayed calm. You destroyed me first. I'm just returning the favor. He threatened me. Said he'd make sure I paid. Hung up. That night, driving home from the hospital, my brakes failed. I was going 60 down a hill when I realized I couldn't slow down. I barely managed to steer into a guardrail instead of oncoming traffic. The car was totaled. I walked away with bruises. The police investigated. The mechanic found tampered cables. Someone had cut them. Deliberately. The work order was traced back to a company owned by Walsh Group. Robert had tried to kill me. His own daughter. The police arrested him the next day. Robert was charged with attempted murder. But his health was declining. The stress, combined with his injuries, was too much. His doctors said he needed another surgery. A complex procedure to relieve pressure on his brain. Without it, he'd die within weeks. And the only surgeon skilled enough to perform it. Me. The hospital board called an emergency meeting. Dr. Moore, we understand the personal complications. But legally and ethically, you're the best option. Will you do it? I sat in that conference room for a long time. Everyone waiting for my answer. I thought about everything. The abandonment. The lies. The threats. The attempted murder. I could let him die. Walk away. Say I couldn't do it because of conflict of interest. Nobody would blame me. But then I thought about Michael. The little boy with the burned face who smiled for the first time after I helped him. I thought about Sister Agnes saying, Make them see what they missed. I thought about the oath I took. First, do no harm. Even when the patient deserves it. I looked at the board. I'll do it. But on my terms. They asked what terms. Pulled out a document. Robert Walsh signs over all rights to his company. Me. I'll rebuild it as a non-profit. The Moore Foundation for Reconstructive Medicine. Helping children who can't afford treatment. The board members exchanged looks. He'll never agree. Smiled. Then he'll die. His choice. They presented my terms to Robert. He refused at first. But as his condition worsened, as he felt death closing in, he changed his mind. He signed everything. The company, the properties, patents, all of it. Me. The daughter he called a mistake. I scheduled his surgery for the following week. The night before Robert's surgery, I visited Sister Agnes. She was older now, slower but still sharp. She held my hands across her kitchen table. "Are you sure about this, Lena?" I told her I was. She studied my face. "Saving him won't heal what he did to you. I knew that. But it'll prove I'm better than him. That I'm not a monster. That I never was." She squeezed my hands. "You were never a monster, sweetheart. You were always perfect." Cried then. After everything, those words still meant the world. The next morning I walked into the operating room. Robert was already unconscious. Vulnerable. Could mess up. One small mistake. Nobody would question it. It was a complicated surgery. Accidents happen. But I didn't. I performed perfectly. Hours. Every cut precise. Every stitch exact. I saved his life. Again. When I was done, I removed my mask and looked at him. This man who created me. Who rejected me. Who tried to kill me. I'd just given him a second chance he didn't deserve. The nurse asked, "Why did you do it?" I told her the truth. Because I wanted him to live knowing I was better than him. Robert woke up 3 days later. Groggy. Confused. But alive. I was checking his vitals when his eyes focused on me. Really focused. For the first time he saw me clearly. Not as his doctor. As his daughter. I removed my mask fully. Let him see my face. The birthmark that had faded over the years but was still visible. The green eyes he gave me. "Remember me now?" I asked quietly. His face went white. He whispered, "Oh God. What have I done?" Robert tried to speak, but I stopped him. "Don't. I don't want your apologies. I don't want your excuses. I just want you to know something." He stared at me, tears forming. I continued. "You thought I was a monster because of how I looked. But you're the monster. You always were. And now everyone knows it." He closed his eyes. "I'm sorry." I shook my head. Too late. I left his room. I never spoke to him again. Over the next months, everything changed. Robert lost everything. His company was dissolved. His assets liquidated. He was convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to 15 years. Even from prison he tried to reach out to me. Letters. All blocked. Elaine divorced him. She testified against him in court. She gave me her half of the company willingly. "I can't undo what we did," she said during our last conversation. "But maybe this can help other children. Children like you." Accepted it. Not for her. For them. The kids who'd be called monsters. Who'd be abandoned. Who'd need someone to see their worth. I rebuilt the Walsh Empire as the Moore Foundation. A non-profit dedicated to reconstructive surgery for children who couldn't afford it. We treated kids with burns, birthmarks, cleft palates, facial deformities. We gave them what I never had, acceptance. Within a year, we'd helped over 300 children. The media called me a hero. I didn't feel like one. I just felt like someone who'd survived. And was helping others survive too. 2 years after the surgery, I was invited to speak at a medical conference. The topic was ethics in medicine. Specifically, treating patients who've harmed you. I almost declined. But then I thought it might help someone. So I went. The auditorium was packed. Doctors, students, nurses. I stood at the podium and told my story. All of it. The abandonment. The birthmark. Medical school. Finding my parents. Saving them. The betrayal. The attempted murder. The final surgery. When I finished, the room was silent. Then someone in the back started clapping. Then another. Then everyone. Standing ovation. Afterward, a young medical student approached me. She had a large scar across her neck. "Dr. Moore, thank you. I've been bullied my whole life for this scar. But hearing your story, it helps me see it differently." Hugged her. "You're not your scar. You're so much more. She cried. So did I. That night I realized something. My parents didn't define me. My birthmark didn't define me. My pain didn't define me. What defined me was what I chose to do with all of it. And I chose to heal. Elaine reached out occasionally. Carefully. She knew I didn't owe her anything. But she tried. Small gestures. She donated to the foundation. She volunteered at events. She never asked for forgiveness. Just opportunities to help. One day she asked if we could have coffee. I agreed, mostly out of curiosity. We met at a small cafe. She looked different. Older. Humbler. Less polished. How are you? She asked. I told her I was fine. She nodded. I see what you're doing with the foundation. It's incredible, Lena. Thanked her. She took a breath. I know I can't be your mother. I know I lost that right. But I'd like to be in your life somehow. If you'll let me. Thought about it. Why now? Why do you care now? She looked down. Because I was a coward then. I let Robert control me. I let fear control me. But seeing what you've become, it made me realize what I lost. I told her the truth. You lost me a long time ago. I'm not the baby you gave away. I'm someone else now. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I know. But maybe I can know this version of you. If you'll give me a chance. I didn't answer right away. I wasn't ready to forgive. Maybe I never would be. But I was willing to try something. Not mother and daughter. But two people who shared DNA and pain. We'll see, I said. She smiled sadly. That's more than I deserve. 3 years after everything began, the Moore Foundation opened its biggest project yet. A children's hospital in Boston. Fully funded. State-of-the-art. Dedicated entirely to reconstructive medicine. We called it the Walsh Center for Healing. I named it that intentionally. Not to honor my parents. But to reclaim the name. To turn something associated with vanity and cruelty into something that represented hope and healing. The opening ceremony was huge. Press everywhere. Politicians. Donors. Families we'd helped. I stood at the podium to give the opening speech. Elaine was in the audience. She'd asked to come. Said yes. I looked out at the crowd and took a breath. 25 years ago, I was told I was ugly. Told I was a mistake. Told I was something to be hidden away. The people who told me that are the same people whose name is on this building. But I'm not here to talk about them. I'm here to talk about every child who's ever been told they're not enough. Every kid who's been bullied for how they look. Every family who can't afford to help their child feel whole. This center is for you. And I promise you, you are beautiful. You are worthy. You are enough. The applause was deafening. People stood. Some were crying. I saw families holding their children, kids we'd helped. Kids who could smile now without pain. After the ceremony, I walked through the hospital. Brand new halls. Bright colors. Playrooms. Art everywhere. This was what I dreamed of as a kid, staring at those medical sketches in Sister Agnes's office. A place where being different wasn't a curse. Where healing wasn't just physical. A little girl approached me. Maybe 6 years old. She had a scar across her cheek from a cleft palate surgery. She handed me a drawing. I made this for you. It was a picture of me with angel wings. She'd written Dr. Hero at the top. I knelt down. Thank you so much. This is beautiful. She smiled. You're beautiful too. Those words hit me harder than anything else. This child who'd been through pain, who understood what it meant to be judged, saw beauty in me. Hugged her. So are you. When I stood up, Elaine was watching from a distance. She was crying. I walked over to her. Thank you for coming. She wiped her eyes. Thank you for letting me. And for this. All of this. I looked around the hospital. This isn't for you. It's for them. She nodded. I know. But it still means something that you turned our shame into something good. I didn't respond. We stood there in silence. Not comfortable. But not hostile either. Just two people trying to find a way forward. 6 months later, Sister Agnes passed away. She was 87. She died peacefully in her sleep at the retirement home for nuns. I got the call at 4 in the morning. I didn't cry right away. I just sat on my bed staring at the wall. She'd been my mother in every way that mattered. The one who taught me kindness, who showed me strength, who believed in me when nobody else did. The funeral was small. Nuns from her order. Some former orphans she'd raised. Me. I gave the eulogy. Sister Agnes saved my life. Not just physically, though she did that too. She saved my soul. She taught me that beauty isn't what you look like. It's what you do. How you treat people. How you show up when it's hard. She showed up for me every day. And because of her, I learned to show up for others. I hope she's proud of who I became. After the service, I visited her grave alone. I placed flowers and sat on the grass. I did it, I told her. I became the person you knew I could be. Help people. I made a difference. Thank you for seeing me when nobody else would. The wind blew gently. Felt peace. Like she was there, telling me I did good. I stayed until sunset. Then I went back to work. Because that's what she would have wanted. For me to keep going. Keep healing. Keep building. A year later I got a letter from Robert. He was still in prison. Serving his sentence. The letter was long. Pages of apologies. Explanations. Regrets. He wrote, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I destroyed any chance of being your father. But I need you to know that I see now what I couldn't see then. You were never the problem. It was. My obsession with perfection blinded me to the most perfect thing I ever had. A daughter. I'm sorry, Lena. I'm sorry for every moment I stole from you. Every moment I should have been your father and chose to be a monster instead. I don't expect you to respond. I just needed you to know. I read it once, then put it in a drawer. I wasn't ready to respond. Maybe I never would be. But I didn't throw it away either. Maybe someday I'd be able to face him. Talk. Close that chapter. But not yet. For now I focused on the foundation. On the kids. On the work. We were expanding. New locations. More surgeries. More lives changed. Every day I saw children come in scared and leave smiling. That was enough. That was everything. Today I'm 30 years old. I'm standing in my office at the Walsh Center, looking at a wall of photos. Kids we've helped. Families we've supported. Lives we've changed. There's Michael, the burned boy from medical school. He's 14 now. Thriving. There's the little girl with the scar who called me beautiful. Is 8. Happy. There's dozens more. Each one a reminder of why I do this. My phone buzzes. It's Elaine. She texts occasionally. Always careful. Always respectful. Today's message says, saw the news about the foundation expanding to California. I'm proud of you. I don't respond immediately. Our relationship is still complicated. Still healing. But it's better than nothing. I look at my reflection in the window. The birthmark is still there. Faded but visible. I used to hate it. Used to see it as proof I wasn't enough. But now I see it differently. It's a reminder. Of where I came from. Of what I survived. Of what I built from pain. I think about my parents' words. You're ugly. You're a mistake. You're a monster. And I smile. 'Cause they were wrong. I was never ugly. I was never a mistake. I was never a monster. I was always enough. I just needed time to see it. When I look in the mirror now, I don't see the girl they threw away. I see the woman who rebuilt herself from their ashes. I see a doctor who's changed hundreds of lives. I see someone who turned rejection into purpose. I see someone who chose kindness when cruelty would have been easier. See beauty. Real beauty. The kind that can't be measured by scars or birthmarks or perfect features. The kind that comes from surviving. From healing. From helping others heal. My phone rings. It's the hospital. A new patient just arrived. A 7-year-old girl with a facial tumor. Her family can't afford treatment. They heard about the foundation. They're asking for me. I grab my coat and head out. 'Cause this is what I do now. This is who I am. Not the abandoned daughter. Not the victim. Not the girl who wasn't pretty enough. I'm Dr. Lena Moore. And I save people. Even the ones who don't deserve it. Even the ones who hurt me. 'Cause that's what real beauty looks like. It looks like grace in the face of cruelty. It looks like choosing to heal instead of harm. It looks like building something meaningful from something broken. My parents said I was ugly, so they gave me up. 25 years later, they didn't know I'd be the one to save them. But the truth is, I didn't save them for them. I saved them for me. To prove that I was better than their worst judgments. To show that the monster was never me. And to build something beautiful from the ugliest moment of my life. That's my story. Not a fairy tale. Not a revenge fantasy. Just the truth. The truth about what happens when you refuse to let other people define you. When you choose to see your own worth even when nobody else does. When you turn pain into purpose. I was 3 days old when my parents called me a monster. I'm 30 years old now. And I've spent every day since proving them wrong. Not for them. For every child who's ever been called ugly. Who's ever been told they're not enough. Who's ever looked in the mirror and hated what they saw. You are enough. You are beautiful. You are worthy. And if nobody else tells you that, I will. Because I know what it's like to be unseen. And I know what it's like to finally be seen. Not for what you look like, but for who you are. That's the gift Sister Agnes gave me. That's the gift I'm giving forward. And that's the most beautiful thing I've ever done. When people ask me now if I've forgiven my parents, I tell them the truth. I'm working on it. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a journey. Some days I'm closer than others. Some days the anger comes back. The hurt resurfaces. But I'm choosing to move forward anyway. Not because they deserve it, but because I do. I deserve peace. I deserve to live without carrying their shame. I deserve to be free. And so I am. Free from their judgment. Free from their standards. Free from their definition of beauty. I define myself now. And I choose to see myself as worthy. As valuable. As enough. My parents tried to erase me. Instead they created me. The version of me that fights for the invisible. That stands up for the rejected. That believes in second chances and third chances and as many chances as it takes. They wanted perfection. They got something better. They got humanity. Messy, scarred, imperfect humanity. And that's worth more than any flawless face ever could be. So thank you, Robert and Elaine Walsh. Thank you for abandoning me. Because if you hadn't, I never would have become the woman I am today. I never would have found my purpose. I never would have helped hundreds of children see their own beauty. Your worst decision became my greatest gift. Your cruelty became my compassion. Your shame became my strength. And that's the ultimate irony. The daughter you threw away because she wasn't perfect enough is now the reason your name means something good. The Walsh Center for Healing stands as a monument. Not to you, but to every child you could have been. Every parent you should have been. Every moment of love you chose to withhold. It stands as proof that beauty isn't about perfection. It's about purpose. And I found mine. In the ashes of your rejection. In the pain of your abandonment. In the scars you left behind. Found my purpose. And I built something beautiful. Something that will outlast your empire. Something that will help people long after we're all gone. That's my revenge. Not destruction. Creation. Not bitterness. Healing. Not hatred. Love. That's what Sister Agnes taught me. That love is always the answer. Even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. Even when the people you love don't love you back. You love anyway. You heal anyway. You show up anyway. Because that's what makes you human. That's what makes you beautiful. That's what makes you enough. So when I look in the mirror now, I see all of it. The birthmark. The scars. Pain. The healing. The growth. Purpose. I see the little girl who was abandoned. And the woman who saved herself. I see the doctor who learned to heal others by healing herself first. I see someone who was called ugly and chose to define beauty differently. I see someone who was called a monster and chose to be human instead. I see someone who was given up on and refused to give up on herself. That's who I am. Dr. Lena Moore, founder of the Moore Foundation, director of the Walsh Center for Healing, daughter of Sister Agnes, the only mother who mattered, survivor, healer, human. And when I help the next child who comes through our doors, when I see their fear turn to hope, when I watch them smile for the first time without pain, I know this is what I was meant to do. This is my purpose. This is my beauty. This is my life. Built from rejection, forged in pain, made beautiful by choice. My parents said I was ugly, so they gave me up. 25 years later, they didn't know I'd be the one to save them. But the real truth, the one nobody talks about, I didn't just save them, I saved myself. And that's the most beautiful story of all.